Hi, Seth here with BlenderSensei.com. Today I want to tell you about an awesome new feature in the latest version of Hacker, which is version 1.2. It is a new autofill feature for the text editor. Hacker already has a lot of really awesome features for using autofill or autocomplete, whatever you want to call it, in Blender's text editor. In the very first version of Hacker, we had IntelliSense powered autofill results. So for instance, if I start typing in BPY, this will show up and I can press enter, or I can use my mouse or press up and down arrow keys and select something. And you can see as I do that, this allows me to basically just point and click code, which is pretty sweet. So we could select object here, object dot, active material, and what have you. So basically the things that are going to by default show up in the IntelliSense powered autofill results in Hacker are going to be everything in the BPY module, as well as any module that you add there in the text file. So if I were to say import the math module there, and I have to move my mouse out of the screen and then back, and then that will refresh all expanded IntelliSense results. So I could then type in math dot all the different math things, and then of course get access to all the parameters available in those things, as well as whatever documentation was written by the original writers, which here is return a float with the magnitude and some more stuff. Okay, so that's awesome. And the other feature we have regarding autofill in the text editor is Hacker has a custom autofill library. So this allows us to add things like this. So I could say ob equals, and you'll see as soon as I press the equal sign, Hacker fills in results that we have custom added to our autofill library. And as you can see here, I've added ob equals context.object and ob equals bpy .context.object. The reason why I've added both of these entries here is that a lot of times context will be fed to you automatically by whatever class or operator you're working in, so you don't need the BPY, but sometimes you'll be writing outside of the scope of an operator or something, and you'll want that. So we could just press that to enter that there. Of course, this wouldn't be very meaningful for this text block here unless I went ahead and imported BPY. Just scrolling here to show you all the cool things that you can import. You may not be aware that there's actually a lot of underscore internal modules that you can import as well, and sometimes it's interesting to learn about this stuff and what it does. Anyway, you type in BPY there, and that would work there. So another example of this is like WM, which is an extremely common variable convention for window manager. So you can see I've got two results I've added here. So whatever terms I add to my custom autofill library in Hacker, those will also automatically be expanded by IntelliSense. So what that means is whenever I type in WM and then dot, this gives me IntelliSense expanded results for that thing. So that's the same thing as if I typed in bpy.context.windowmanager. Another example of this is ops, which you can see I have available here. And of course, if I type in ops equals, this allows me to quickly add that result from the autofill library. This is really useful in two ways. It's really useful because it stops you from having to constantly manually type out things like this, this line or this line. You just have to type in the variable and then equals, and then whatever you have set up there will show up. And then it also makes these values automatically expanded in IntelliSense no matter where you are in the scope of your program or your code. So we can edit the custom autofill library in two ways. We can right click and then come down to edit autofill and edit autofill library. And here we can set up these terms in bulk, so we could add whatever we want. So for instance, let's see, right now if I were to type in mods that and then equals or just mods, it doesn't do anything. However, we could set up in here, we could say mods equals bpy dot context dot object, which is the active object, dot modifiers here, and save this. and head back here. And of course, we don't actually have any modifiers on this object, so this won't expand into anything, but it should once we type in mods here and then equals. This now shows that result. Much the same way that I've added two results to pop up for like the WM and the OB equals for the two different situations, because a lot of times you don't need BPY when context is passed through operators. So if you've ever written anything in Blender, then certainly you have added an operator. So I'll just enter in a basic operator here real quick to show you what I'm talking about with a code insert. So you'll notice here in this execute function here, there is self and context. And so this is a default setup for operator classes in Blender. So for instance, if you're writing for some junk to happen here in your operator, you don't need to, I don't need to include the BPY there. So this is why I have two results set up there, so I can, you know, very quickly pick either one. Just a little bit more convenience for you there. So right now we have mods set up to do this. So this was an example of how if you had a bunch of different things you wanted to edit, you could do this in bulk, you know, and really save yourself a lot of time and make your life awesome in developing add-ons for Blender. Close that guy out. Or you can also add items on the fly. So I could just do mods equal context dot, basically the same thing we already set up over there. Like this, you just highlight it, right click, edit autofill, and add selected to library. And now you'll see when we type in this mods, yep, there we go. So yeah, so there is that entry that we added, and that will show up now forever whenever we start Blender or turn this off, come back a week later, whatever, it's going to be there until we remove it. What also shows up in these results are any basic Python syntax. So obviously import or like type, which you can use to, you know, get feedback on what kind of variable is being used, or things like print, obviously. But the one thing that we have been missing up until this most recent version of Hacker version 1.2 is a dynamic reading of all the contents of the active text block or active file. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to click open the Hacker Navigator button, dig around into Blender's core script files, which this will always point to whatever version of Blender you have open, its core files, so we can quickly access, say, all the add-ons it ships with. Let's go ahead and open up Ant Landscape. And okay, so here are some function names here. So right now, if I were to just start typing menu, you see nothing shows up. However, with the new feature in Hacker, if we right click, more tools, preferences, and come to autofill, and actually this include locals, which is the feature I'm talking about, is activated by default in the latest version of Hacker. I just unchecked it for this example here. But if we click it back on and then move our mouse out of the way to get a refresh there and start typing, now we get complete autofill results for everything on the entire page, no matter where the scope is. So this is really awesome for saving time. It's also really useful for just avoiding spelling errors and syntax errors in your code. So say I start typing that, we can basically get a list of all the different classes that are written in this particular text block here, this file, this page, whatever you want to call it. So these results are not IntelliSense expanded. That is to say, if I type in the name of that function up there, it's not going to be able to dig into this stuff and then tell me what's more junk that I can continue peering into this function or class or whatever. Reason being is if it was to do that, then it would have to compile the entire script, and sometimes these scripts can be thousands of lines long. It would have to compile the entire thing on every keystroke. And so for people who are typing, you know, 50, 60 or more words a minute, that would just feel like typing through mud. So that would suck. So we don't do that. But it is extremely useful for just for getting some name of a variable somewhere you have written on the page, It's very useful. What's also cool about this is that this will give you dynamic feedback up to 500 lines in a file. Basically, if your file is under 500 lines, it will read from the entire page on every keystroke. However, past 500 lines, any new content that you add as you're typing, you'll have to move your mouse out of the way and come back to it. So for instance, let's see, how long is this? This is well over 500, it's 953. So say I were to type in something like Fishman equals 45 and Wolfman equals Jack. If I start typing in fish, we don't get any results here unless we move the mouse out and then come back. And then these results are available. But if we're working with a much smaller file, say we're just like testing a couple of functions or doing some small script tests, this is really useful because this will dynamically read as we type. So we could say, once again, Fishman equals 22, Wolfman equals Jack, party time equals now, and when should we equals, no, I need something with another number. Let's see. Fishman, what about Toadman? There's only 5 of those. So Fishman plus Toadman. Yeah, okay, so basically you get the basic idea here. So that's reading that dynamically. All right, so that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.